Make him feel erased from your life. He'll come running back with regret. I am Bonang, Matheba, and girl, let me take you right back to the night everything shifted. It was a Thursday, nothing special on the calendar, just the usual hum of city lights outside my window and the low glow of my phone screen lighting up the room. We had argued earlier, nothing explosive, just the kind of quiet tension that builds when someone's energy starts pulling away. I felt it in my chest before I saw it in his eyes, that slow fade, like a song winding down to silence. He grabbed his keys, muttered something about needing space, and just like that, the door clicked shut behind him. No slammed door, no dramatic exit, just the softest close that somehow echoed louder than any fight we ever had. I stood there in my silk robe, barefoot on the hardwood, staring at the spot where he used to stand when he'd pull me in for a kiss goodnight. And in that moment, something cracked open inside me, not my heart, because that had been bruised before, but my pride, my need to be chosen. I reached for my phone, thumb hovering over his name, the urge to text, "Come back, let's talk," burning like fire in my fingertips, but I didn't. I set the phone down, poured myself a glass of red, and let the silence settle. That was the first night I chose me over the chase. I remember sliding down to the floor, back against the couch, tears rolling, but not one sound escaping my lips. I wasn't crying for him, I was crying for the version of me who thought love meant holding on no matter what. The girl who would have run after him barefoot into the street, begging for answers he never planned to give. But something shifted that night. I looked around my apartment, my books, my plants, the vision board I'd neglected while trying to fit into his life, and I realized this space was still mine. The air still smelled like my vanilla candle. The couch still held the shape of my body, not his. He walked out, but he didn't take me with him. I wiped my face, stood up, and whispered to the quiet room, "If he doesn't want this, someone will." That was the beginning, the moment I decided his exit wasn't my ending. I didn't know it then, but that Thursday night was the night I stopped auditioning for a role he'd already cast someone else in. I went to bed alone, but for the first time in months, I slept without waiting for a text that never came. And when the sun came up Friday morning, I didn't reach for my phone to check if he'd called. I reached for my journal instead. I wrote one line: "His absence is not my emergency." And girl, that line became my anthem. I didn't know how long the healing would take, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to spend another second trying to convince a man to stay where he didn't want to be. That night taught me the first rule of erasing him. You don't chase what's already gone. You stand still, breathe deep, and let the door close. Because the moment you stop running after someone, you start running towards yourself. And trust me, that's where the magic begins. Today, I need you to sit with me like we're on the same couch, legs tucked under, coffee steaming between us. Because what I'm about to say isn't just advice, it's the truth I had to tattoo on my soul after he left. Your worth, it doesn't live in his hands. It never did. I used to think love was a transaction: give enough, shrink enough, shine just bright enough to keep him around and maybe he'd stay. I'd dim my laugh when it got too loud, soften my opinions when they got too sharp, because God forbid I was too much. But the day he walked out, I saw it clear as daylight. He didn't leave because I wasn't enough. He left because he couldn't carry what I was. And baby, that's not your burden. That's his. I remember the first time I said it out loud. I was in my bathroom, makeup half done, staring at the mirror like it owed me answers. I said, "Bonang, you are not broken because he didn't choose you." And I cried, not pretty tears, but the ugly kind that come with realizing you've been measuring yourself against someone else's ruler. I thought about every time I apologized for taking up space, every time I said it's fine when it wasn't, every time I let his silence tell me I wasn't worthy. And I got mad, not at him, but at me for believing the lie. So I started small. I wore the red dress he said was too bold to brunch with my girls. I laughed loud at the table, no hand over my mouth. I posted the selfie without asking if it was too much. And every time I did something just for me, I felt the weight lift. Your worth isn't a negotiation, sis. It's not up for debate because some man couldn't see it. You were whole before he met you, whole when he held you, and whole now that he's gone. I started making a list. Sounds simple, but it changed everything. I wrote down everything I loved about myself before I ever loved him. My curls that bounce when I dance. The way I cry at sad movies, but still show up for my friends. My ambition that scares people, but lights me up. My heart that loves hard even after it's been cracked open. That list became my mirror. Every morning I read it like scripture. And slowly, the voice that used to whisper, maybe if I was different, got drowned out by the truth, I am enough. Not because someone stayed, but because I am. You don't need his validation to know you're a queen. You need to remember the crown was yours the day you were born. He didn't take it when he left. He just reminded you it was time to wear it again. So today, I want you to write your own list. Not for Instagram, not for likes, but for you. Write it in lipstick on your mirror if you have to. Because the moment you stop tying your worth to his presence, you start living in your power. And girl, there's nothing more dangerous than a woman who knows what she's worth. Hey love, pulling up a chair right next to you. Because now we're getting into the part that scares people, the part that feels like losing control, but is actually where you take it all back. Silence. Not the petty kind, not the I'm ignoring you to punish you vibe, but the deep, intentional, soul-shaking silence that says, I'm done performing for your comfort. After he left, I wanted to scream. I wanted to send the paragraph, the voice note, the how could you essay that would make him feel every ounce of my pain. But I didn't. And that choice, it became my superpower. The first week was hell. My phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every notification made my heart jump, hoping it was him, but it never was. And one night, I almost broke. I had the text typed, "Do you even care how much this hurt?" Cursor blinking. Send button glowing. But I looked at that message and realized something. He already knew. He saw my tears, he heard my voice crack, he watched me beg for 5 more minutes of his time, and he still chose to leave. So what would one more text do? Make him care? No. It would just give him the satisfaction of knowing he still had a piece of me. So I deleted it, every word. And I went quiet, not just on my phone, but in my energy. I stopped talking about him to anyone who would listen. Stopped replaying the breakup in my head like a tragic movie, stopped checking his socials at 2 a.m. And in that silence, something wild happened. I started hearing myself, my own thoughts, my own dreams. The girl I'd pushed aside while trying to keep him. Silence isn't empty, sis. It's full of you. It's where you rebuild, where you stop reacting and start responding to your own needs. And the craziest part, he felt it. 3 weeks in, I got the first breadcrumb. A hey text at 11:47 p.m. No context, no apology. Just a hook to see if I'd bite. I didn't. I left it on read. Not out of spite, but because I was busy watering my own garden, busy laughing with my sister, busy dancing in my kitchen to Beyonce like the world was mine. And every time I chose silence over explanation, I chose me. People think silence is weak, like you're hiding. But baby, silence is strategy. It's the pause between heartbeats where you decide what deserves your voice. It's the space where he realizes the spotlight's off him and back on you. And when you master silence, you master peace. You stop giving access to someone who treated your heart like a revolving door. You stop feeding the chaos. And in that quiet, you become untouchable. Not because you're cold, but because you're whole. So the next time you want to send that text, ask yourself this: is this for me or for him? If the answer isn't you, delete it. Close the app, put on your favorite song, and let your silence do the talking. Because the loudest thing a woman can say is nothing at all when she's finally choosing herself. Now that we've locked in the silence, let's talk about the screen that used to feel like a lifeline, but really was just a leash. I'm talking about your phone, your socials, every pixel that still carries his shadow. The first thing I did after deleting that unsent text was open Instagram and unfollow him. Not in a dramatic I'm done post, no caption, no story, just a quiet tap that severed the daily feed of his life. I didn't block him yet, because blocking can feel like anger, and I wasn't angry anymore, I was protecting. Next came the photos, hundreds of them. Us at the lake, us at brunch, us pretending the world was perfect. I didn't delete them all at once. That would have felt like erasing history, but I archived the ones that made my chest tight. Out of sight, out of heart. Then, the messages. I scrolled back to the first "Good morning, beautiful" and felt the ache, but I held the select button and watched the blue bubbles vanish. Not because I hated him, but because I refused to live in a museum of what was. I turned off read receipts, muted his notifications even though he wasn't texting, and removed his number from favorites. Every small action was a brick in the wall I was building between past me and future me. And girl, let me tell you about the group chats. I left the one where his boys still joked about how Bonang doing because I didn't need updates delivered like gossip. I stopped liking his sister's posts out of courtesy. I even unfollowed the restaurant we claimed as ours because every tagged photo felt like a ghost. It wasn't petty, it was pruning. You prune a tree so it grows stronger, not to kill it. I curated my feed like my peace depended on it, because it did. Travel accounts, Black women entrepreneurs, workout pages, scripture quotes, anything that watered my spirit instead of reminding me of drought. And when the urge hit to check his story at 1 a.m., I opened my own camera roll instead, looked at pictures of me glowing at my cousin's wedding, me closing a deal, me laughing so hard my eyes disappeared. I replaced his digital real estate with mine. The beauty of this erase is that it's invisible to everyone but you. No one sees the unfollow, no one hears the archive, but you feel the space open up in your chest. You stop bracing for the next post that might sting. You stop performing "I'm fine" in the comments. You just breathe, and one day you'll realize you haven't thought about his handle in weeks. That's not cold, that's clarity. Digital distance isn't about hiding, it's about healing in private so you can show up in public whole. So tonight, grab your phone, not to text him, but to free yourself. Unfollow, archive, mute, delete, not out of spite, but out of love for the woman who deserves a timeline that lifts her up. Because when your digital world reflects your worth, your real world follows. With the screens clean, it was time to come home, not to an address, but to the woman I'd left waiting while I chased his validation. I started in the bathroom, the one place I couldn't escape myself. I lit a candle, the same vanilla one from that first night alone, and ran a bath so hot the mirror fogged. I dropped in lavender oil and played Jill Scott Lowe, the kind of music that feels like a hug. I didn't scroll, didn't podcast, just sat in the water and let the heat melt the tension I'd been carrying in my shoulders. I looked at my body, really looked, the stretch marks he once kissed, the curves he said were perfect until they weren't convenient. And I said out loud, "Thank you for carrying me through this." I started touching my skin like it was sacred, not like it needed fixing. That bath became ritual. Every Sunday night, no matter what, water, music, silence. Then came the journal. I bought a leather one, thick pages, no lines, because my healing wasn't going to be boxed in. I wrote letters I'd never send, pages of "how dare you" that turned into "how dare I forget myself." I wrote gratitude for my legs that still danced, my hands that still created, Miley, my heart that still hoped. I wrote affirmations in cursive until they stopped feeling like lies. I am safe in my own skin. I am enough as I am. I am becoming. I taped Post-its on my mirror, not the cute kind, the real kind. You don't need his sorry to be free. Your peace is non-negotiable. I prayed, not for him to come back, but for me to remember who I was before I shrank to fit his hands. I danced in my living room, no audience, just me and the beat, sweat dripping, hips moving like they were shaking off every "be smaller" he ever implied. I cooked for one, real meals, salmon and asparagus, not just salad, because he liked me snatched. I ate at the table, not in front of the TV, tasting every bite like a celebration. I called my mama, not to cry, but to laugh about old stories, to hear her say, "You've always been my firecracker." I FaceTimed my best friend, and we did face masks and talked about everything but him. I started saying yes to me and no to anything that felt like auditioning. I bought the expensive lotion, the silk pillowcase, the flowers for my nightstand, because I deserved beauty, even when no one was watching. I read books that fed my mind, The Body Keeps the Score, all about love, marking pages like scripture. I cried in yoga, not from pain, but from release, downward dog holding space for everything I'd carried. And slowly the apartment stopped feeling empty. It started feeling full, full of me. My laugh echoed off the walls again. My plants grew because I remembered to water them, and myself. Coming home to yourself isn't a destination. It's a daily choice to treat the woman in the mirror like the love of your life. Because when you become your own safe place, no one can evict you from your peace. Once I was home in my skin, it was time to build a life so rich he couldn't even recognize the blueprint. I started with my body, not to punish it, but to partner with it. I signed up for a gym that played hip-hop and had women who looked like me, thick thighs and all. The first class, I almost quit at the warm-up, but the instructor, a sister with a fade and a smile that could power the city, said, "This is for you, not for him." I kept coming back. 3 months in, I wasn't just stronger, I was louder in my own skin, squats building confidence along with glutes. I signed up for an online course, Branding for Creatives, because I'd always wanted to turn my side hustle into something real. Late nights, laptop glowing, coffee cold, but every assignment felt like planting seeds in soil that was finally mine. I launched a small collection, nothing big, just teas with affirmations I needed to hear. I am the vibe. They sold out in a weekend, not because they were perfect, but because women saw themselves in the words. I said yes to trips. I'd postponed a girls' weekend in Miami, dancing till sunrise, no curfew, no explanations. I said yes to coffee with a colleague who always made me laugh, platonic, but reminding me connection doesn't have to be romantic to be rich. I redecorated my space, new art on the walls, pieces by Black women, bold colors that made me smile when I walked in. I started a savings account labeled Future Me, every dollar a promise that my dreams wouldn't wait for a man's permission. I volunteered at the youth center, teaching girls how to speak their truth, watching their eyes light up when they realized their voice mattered. I cooked new recipes, hosted potlucks where the table was full of love and nobody asked where my man was. I ran my first 5K, not fast, but I crossed the finish line with tears and a medal that said I did it for me. I said no to anything that drained, yes to everything that filled. My calendar stopped having empty spaces waiting for his plans. It overflowed with mine. And the wild part, people noticed, not just him, but everyone. My energy shifted. My walk had purpose. My laugh came easy. I wasn't performing happy, I was living it. Building this life wasn't about proving anything to him, it was about proving everything to me. That I could create joy without his input, that my world could expand without his gravity. And the more I built, the smaller his absence became, until it was just a footnote in a story that was all about my rise. When you construct a life so full of purpose, passion, and people who pour back, you don't just erase him, you outgrow the space he used to occupy. The life I was building started showing up on my face, not in the filtered way, but in the kind of light that doesn't need a ring light to shine. People kept saying, "Girl, what's different?" And I just smiled because the difference wasn't a new highlighter, it was peace. I woke up without the knot in my stomach, the one that used to form the second I remembered he wasn't there. My eyes looked rested, not from sleep, but from not crying myself dehydrated. My skin cleared because stress stopped living rent-free in my pores. I started wearing colors again, not the muted tones I'd adopted to blend into his mood, but yellows that matched my energy, reds that said I was here. My laugh came from my belly, not the polite chuckle I'd practiced to keep from overwhelming him. I caught my reflection in store windows and didn't look away, I winked, because the woman staring back finally recognized herself. This glow wasn't about weight loss or a new haircut, though both happened naturally when I started eating to fuel joy instead of numbing pain. It was the way I carried myself, shoulders back, chin up, not in defiance, but in ownership. I stopped apologizing for taking up space in conversations, in rooms in my own life. I started saying I deserve without flinching. I deserved the good table at the restaurant. I deserved the promotion I asked for. I deserved love that didn't make me beg. And the more I claimed it, the more the universe handed it over. Friends started calling me for advice, not about him, but about how to find their own light. I became the friend who showed up with wine and wisdom, not the one drowning in what did I do wrong. My energy became magnetic, not because I was trying to attract, but because I was finally radiating. Men noticed, not just the ones sliding into DMs, but the ones who held doors and meant it, who asked questions and listened to answers. But I wasn't dating yet. I was courting myself, taking me to the movies, buying me flowers, writing me love notes in my journal. The glow up wasn't for Instagram, though the pictures looked fire. It was for the mirror at 6 a.m. when no one else was watching. It was the way I danced in my kitchen to old school R&B, hips swaying like they were celebrating freedom. It was the way I prayed, not for him to miss me, but for me to keep choosing me. This inner light doesn't flicker when the likes slow down or when a text doesn't come. It's steady because it's rooted in truth. I am whole, I am worthy, I am becoming. And when you carry that kind of glow, you don't need to announce it, it announces you. The world makes room for a woman who knows her light isn't borrowed, it's born within her. And then, like clockwork, he noticed. It started small, a view on my story from an account I knew was his burner, because who else searches natural hair care at 2 a.m.? Then came the text, not an apology, but a feeler. Saw you killed that presentation, proud of you. I left it on read, not because I was playing games, but because I was in the middle of a workout. Sweat dripping, music blasting, and his words didn't deserve to pause my stride. A week later, another text, been thinking about you. This one came with a memory, a photo from 6 months ago, us at the beach, my head on his shoulder. I looked at it, felt the tug, but then I looked at the woman in that photo and realized she was smiling for the camera, not for her soul. I didn't respond. I posted a story instead, me and my girls at rooftop brunch, laughter frozen in golden hour light, no caption needed. He viewed it within minutes. Then the calls started, not the late night drunk dials, but the calculated ones. 7:32 p.m. on a Tuesday, the time he knew I used to wait for his "How was your day?" I let it ring, not out of cruelty, but because I was on a date with myself, curled up with a book and tea, and my piece was louder than his ringtone. He left a voicemail, the first in months. "Bonang, I messed up. Can we talk?" I listened once, heard the crack in his voice, the one I used to soothe with, "It's okay, we'll figure it out." But this time, I deleted it without saving. Because talking wouldn't rewrite history, it would just reopen a chapter I'd already closed. His friends started asking mine, "How's she doing?" "She looks happy." And my girls, God bless them, kept it loyal. "She's good, real good." No details, no breadcrumbs. He showed up at the coffee shop I used to drag him to accidentally on the same day I posted my latte art. I saw him before he saw me, watched him scan the room like he was looking for a piece of himself he'd lost. When our eyes met, I smiled, not the tight, polite one, but the kind that said, "I see you, and I'm still good." He approached all nervous energy and rehearsed lines. But I was already gathering my bag. My meeting with a potential client was in 5. "Good to see you," I said, and meant it, because seeing him confirmed I'd outgrown the space he used to fill. He tried to prolong, "Can I call you later?" But I was already walking out, sunlight on my face, next step in my purpose calling. His noticing wasn't validation, it was confirmation. Confirmation that the light I'd been cultivating was bright enough to reach even the shadows he'd retreated to. But more than that, it was confirmation that I didn't need his eyes to see my worth. I'd already seen it myself. When a man starts circling back, it's not about your glow pulling him. It's about his regret, realizing what he fumbled, and the strongest response is the one you live, not the one you give. The regret hit him like a freight train, and girl, I didn't have to lift a finger. It started with the apology text, 3 paragraphs long, time-stamped 3:17 a.m., the hour when truth and tequila mix. He detailed every mistake, every time he took me for granted, every moment he chose convenience over commitment. He ended with, "I'd do anything to make it right." I read it in the morning, over coffee, sunlight streaming through my new curtains, the ones I picked because they made me happy, not because they matched his couch. I felt the weight of his words, but not the pull, because by then I'd built too much to go back to what broke me. He called that night, and this time I answered, not because I owed him, but because I was curious about the man on the other end of the line. His voice was smaller than I remembered, stripped of the confidence that used to make me shrink. He talked about therapy, about realizing he'd been running from his own issues, about how my absence created space for him to see himself clearly. He cried, not the manipulative kind, but the broken kind, the kind that comes when you finally understand the cost of your choices. I listened, not interrupting, not comforting, just letting him sit in the silence he'd once left me in. When he finished, he asked the question I knew was coming, "Is there any chance?" I took a breath, felt the steadiness in my chest, and said, "There was, but you taught me what I deserve, and it's more than what we had." He tried to argue, to promise change, to paint pictures of a future where he'd show up differently. But I'd already seen that movie, and the ending never changed. I told him I wished him healing, meant it, and hung up before the tears could start. Not mine, his. The next week, he showed up at my door, flowers in hand, the kind I used to hint at but never received. My neighbor saw him waiting, texted me before I got home. I turned around, went to my sister's instead because my home was sacred now, and his presence didn't belong in spaces I'd cleansed. He left the flowers, a note that said, "I get it now." I donated them to the senior center down the street because beauty shouldn't wilt on my doorstep waiting for someone who was already gone. His regret became public, subtle posts about losing the best thing, songs on his story about second chances, mutual friends telling me he couldn't stop talking about what he'd lost. But I was too busy living to monitor his mourning. I was closing deals, planning trips, laughing till my stomach hurt, loving my life so loudly his whispers couldn't reach me. Regret is a teacher, but not my teacher anymore. His lesson was, for him, mine was already learned. That a woman who knows her worth doesn't negotiate with yesterday's mistakes. And the most powerful closure isn't the conversation where he finally gets it. It's the life you build where his apology can't even find the address. When regret comes knocking, you don't have to open the door because you've already moved to a better neighborhood. The flowers were gone, the texts dried up, and the city kept spinning, but something permanent had settled in my bones. The quiet certainty that I am the kingdom, the crown, the entire coronation. I stopped checking for his shadow in my mentions, stopped bracing for the next breadcrumb apology. Instead, I started waking up grateful for the space he vacated because it gave me room to stretch into the woman I was always meant to be. I flew to Cape Town on a whim, just me and a carry-on, watched the sunrise over Table Mountain, and realized the view was better without anyone else's reflection in the glass. I negotiated a raise that made my ancestors proud, signed the contract with a pen I bought myself, no longer waiting for a man to take care of things. I mentored a teenage girl who reminded me of my younger self, all fire and doubt, and told her the same truth. I now live. Your worth is not a maybe, it's a yes, always. I threw a dinner party for 12 women, no plus ones, just stories, wine, and laughter that shook the walls. We toasted to closed doors, to new floors, to the kind of love that starts in the mirror. And I started running at dawn, not to outrun pain, but to greet the day on my own terms. Lungs burning, playlist bumping, city waking up to my rhythm. I said yes to the speaking gig in Atlanta, stood on a stage in front of hundreds, and spoke about resilience without once mentioning his name, because my story is bigger than the chapter he tried to write. I bought the apartment next door, turned it into a studio where I paint on weekends, canvases covered in color that has nothing to do with heartbreak and everything to do with becoming. I adopted a rescue dog, named her Luna, because every queen needs a loyal companion who loves without conditions. I learned to cook oxtail the way my grandmother did, slow and patient, the smell filling every corner of a home that now smells like legacy, not longing. I forgave him, not in a text, not in a conversation, but in the quiet of my own heart, because carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick. I forgave myself harder. For every time I dimmed, every time I begged, every time I thought love meant losing pieces of me. I started a tradition. Every new moon, I write down what I'm releasing and what I'm calling in, then burn the paper in a copper bowl on my balcony, watching the smoke carry old weight into the night. I dance at weddings now, not in the corner hoping he's watching from afar, but in the center, sweat and joy mixing, because my happiness doesn't need an audience to be real. I mentor, I travel, I create, I rest, I rise, all without checking for permission from a past that no longer has my number. My circle got smaller, but the love got deeper. Friends who celebrate my wins like their own, who remind me who I am when I forget for a second. I wear my natural hair in an afro that defies gravity, because the only opinion that matters is the one I see in the mirror. I buy myself jewelry, not to fill a void, but to mark milestones. A gold cuff for the book deal, diamond studs for the day I paid off my car, a pearl ring for the night I realized I am the prize. I pray differently now, gratitude so loud it drowns out every old doubt. I sleep diagonal across the bed because the whole space is mine, no longer saving room for someone who couldn't stay. I laugh at jokes I used to hold back, cry at movies without shame, speak my mind without apology. I am not healed because he's gone. I am healed because I stayed with myself through every messy, beautiful layer of becoming. And the funniest part, men approach now, not with games, but with respect, because they can feel the boundary before they cross it. But I'm not rushing I'm savoring the season of being whole on my own, knowing that any love that enters will have to match the love I give myself, not complete it. I am the plot twist he never saw coming, the heroine who didn't need rescuing, the queen who built her throne from the ashes of what tried to burn her. My life is not perfect. There are still hard days, still moments of doubt, but they don't define me, they refine me. I am not the woman he left. I am the woman who left him behind in the dust of my own evolution. And every sunrise is proof that the story keeps writing itself, chapter after chapter, all penned by a hand that finally knows its power. You, yes you, the one reading this with tears or triumph or both, you are not waiting for your crown, you are wearing it right now, even if you can't see it yet. Live like the queen you are, not for applause, not for revenge, but for the pure, unfiltered joy of ruling your own heart. And when you do, the world will bow. Not because you demanded it, but because your light leaves no room for anything less. If this spoke to your spirit, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment with your favorite takeaway, like so your girls can find this truth too, and share it wide, because every sister deserves to know she's already royalty, and we rise together, never miss the next drop of real talk, fresh glow, and unapologetic truth.